Yes, and you have the time and the patience. I think it's well worth it in the long run when you get those gems like that.
Yeah.
Now this brings us to Gary McKinnon, the cyber hacker who broke into the Pentagon's computer and the FBI's computer and supposedly found evidence of UFO contact, aliens, technology. He mentioned something about there was a release about, he found information about, quote, non-terrestrial officers and, quote, fleet-to-fleet transfers.
Yes.
And then you go into the documentary and say that we have patrol discs in the UFO fleet or squadron of UFOs secretly controlled by the U.S. military. So that could possibly be connected with
Carrie
STS.
They're called
Cassidy.
USS, and number one's USS Forrestal, and the other one is USS, the guy that headed SAC.
That's amazing. There,
And
yes.
Carrie Cassidy of Project Camelot has done some did a really fine interview with Gary McKinnon,
Yes.
and that's worth watching too. If you go to the Project Camelot website, you'll be able to watch that and a number of other very good interviews as well.
He's a brilliant young man. I think he has Asperger's syndrome, but he's brilliant. I mean, he showed the
The
loopholes.
USSS stands for United States Spaceship.
Oh, that's
Naval
very
ships at
interesting.
sea are US something, USN something.
Now,
That's
the U.S. government has spent over 7 years trying to extradite Gary McKinnon from
Yep.
Great Britain. He's a British citizen,
Yes.
and there's been a large, long-lasting fight between McKinnon's lawyers and the U.S. government trying to get him delivered over to the United States.
So they
now,
can silence it.
now, why would the U.S. be so interested in
A hippie type.
a hippie
Yeah, there you
type
go. He's a young
investigating
kid.
something
Biggest
called
computer in the
UFOs when
world, living with
UFOs
his
don't
dad.
exist?
I think if
Mother.
the government were smart, they'd want to hire him to work for them.
Yeah.
You know, he's brilliant, absolutely. With Bill Uhouse, I wanted to mention him too. He was a jet flight simulator mechanical engineer. We should say the late Bill Uhouse, God rest
Grew
his
up
soul.
inside.
Passed away last year.
Yes, and he claimed to also have worked at S4.
Yes.
And then you say that S4 became a simulator facility mostly to train new pilots to fly our new aircraft,
That's
which would fit in why Bill Uhouse was there. And then you further mention in the documentary that Mr. Uhouse also claimed that at S4 he worked closely with an alien named J-Rod.
J-Rod,
the one that
yeah.
you mentioned that they put in the meeting, they put him in the normal white-looking clothes and
Yeah,
a
that's
shirt
the
to try
one,
to make.
yes.
Yes, it's spelled
They had
J-A-R-O-D.
telepathic contact, J-Rod and Bill Uhouse, and that's part of how he translated his Zeta Reticulan science, that the corporations that were working with inside S4 through government contracts like General Electric that were developing these type of technologies, he would translate it to Uhouse, and Uhouse would help fabricate flight simulators. That was Uhouse's specialty, flight simulator.
In the big conference at Los Alamos,
In
they finally
1968,
decided
yes.
the alien was able to convey through his co-worker, Bill Uhouse, that the reason we were making no progress is because it takes a certain amount of mental input to make their technology work, and we have never learned to impart the mental input.
Boy, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And they also ended up calling Bill Uhouse J-Rod number 2 or
Yeah, but
J-Rod
J-Rod,
2.
at that time, J-Rod was free out there. He had a special habitat. He could fly his craft around. He could go all over the country. He was not detained. Then he got ill and passed on. The new J-Rod that is being treated at Los Alamos is a different entity altogether.
And this is focused on in volume 2 of S4 Informers, the Bill Uhouse material.
All right, I'm going to show a clip in just a moment here. And then Bill Uhouse also claimed that there's a group of multinational corporations involved with the U.S. military and with certain extraterrestrial groups, and they're covertly hiding the existence of ETs and their secret back engineering program, and that this group is acting as a separatist nation state. Uhouse also said that there was a, quote, satellite government, different than either our shadow government or the United States government. Edward Teller, here he's up in the cover-up. Edward Teller publicly stated he knew nothing about Bob Lazar or UFOs. You know, sometimes they say, well, I don't know anything about UFOs. He could be telling the truth, like Dr. Sella says, because they know what they are. So when he says, I don't know anything about UFOs, he's really telling the truth because they've identified them. And he claimed that he didn't know Bob Lazar, but didn't he help clear him to work at
produced
S4?
a photograph standing in front of his house in Los Alamos with Edward Teller looking at a jet car that Bob Lazar had built
Yes.
with an airplane jet engine in a race car.
And there was a newspaper article about it too. Yes, go ahead. I was going to.
Well, I haven't seen that photograph, but I have, in regards to Teller, he did, according to Lazar, hire Lazar for work at S4. So Lazar's testimony states that he got the contract through EG&G with Teller's help, helping him get a position within the S4 facility to help on the gravitational work that was needed in the Project Galileo project.
I see, that makes sense. You know, and also too, speaking of information that's coming out, we had some corroborating information that was supplied to 2 different people by the late Colonel Wilson, and also supplied to you by Connor O'Ryan as a drawing, and momentarily we'll show the clip of that, comparing it.
Colonel Steve Wilson.
Yeah, Colonel Steve Wilson. Yeah. Colonel Wilson, he was given his
and they had
testimony.
a copy of it. They're doing the
created
review or
from his
taking
paint.
down the questions and answers and all kinds of additional notes. Agnes Sojak painted this painting by verbal description from Colonel Steve Wilson as she painted, with him correcting as she painted. You notice the one in Bay 1 is identical to the one that Connor O'Ryan sketched. Notice Bay 2, 3, and 4 have identical craft with the same ship, as Connor also substantially sketched in his drawing.
In secret.
Yes.
He had never made it public
Okay.
at that point. And what happened was Colonel Steve Wilson came out, found out he had a cancer, felt that it had been administered by his superiors because
He
he
had
knew
a-
too much. He was in charge of Project Pounce, which was
Yes.
in charge of retrieving
Recovery.
objects, crashed aerial objects,
Project
and taken
Pounce.
back to S4.
Okay.
And so when he realized he had cancer and felt it had been given to him by superiors, just as Connor O'Ryan did when he finally left S4, he went to Italy, and at Italy he decided to go to a UFO conference, met Robert Pinotti. Pinotti hired an artist to do that painting under Colonel Steve Wilson's direct supervision. Then Wilson went in the United States and sat down with Richard Boylan, Dr. Richard Boylan, and Bill Hamilton, gave more testimony. They set up a hasty UFO conference because they knew Wilson didn't have many days to live.
Yes.
2 weeks later, the conference was about to take place. The day before the conference, he dies mysteriously in a Phoenix hospital
He had
and was
brain-
never able to go before the media and make his
Terrible.
testimony.
He died of a fast-acting form of brain cancer.
Phil Schneider, also who talks about underground bases and tunnels, he was found murdered within 9 months after giving his testimony. And some of his most important testimony is included in this documentary, where he outs a number of companies, including Mitsubishi, Bechtel, General Electric, a number of others who are getting all these secret government black budget funding to do this
Yes.
type of science, and then seed it to themselves, knowing which companies are going to come out with this new technology, and so they know exactly which companies to invest their dollars in.
That's right.
and become very, very wealthy.
Well, it's business. It's all business.
The good old boys
Yeah,
network.
exactly. You know, I had a little bit of corroborating information about claims that there were aliens at S4. These claims have been separately made by Connor O'Ryan / Derek Hennessy, Robert Lazar, Bill Uhouse, and Colonel Steve Wilson. And as shown by the previous clip, corroborating evidence is there, apparent corroborating evidence indicating that 2 different men saw these craft in the bays on level 2 at area S4. And also, too, there was art made of aliens. So we're going to show you Colonel Steve Wilson's result at the painting from Agnes Sojak, who painted it.
Sketched and had also sketched a tank holding the alien bodies, and Agnes Sojak had made the same painting under the detailed description of Colonel Steve Wilson that shows 6 cylinders which show bodies in tanks being held by a band around the waist. And notice the regulator on the side of the tank, just exactly as it was sketched by Connor O'Ryan 4 years earlier. So I thought that this might be enough confirmation, since we had no other information which we could rely on to confirm the Connor O'Ryan story, and I decided to release it at that point.
Knowledge.
That's
And Wendell
amazing.
only allowed me to release it after it being hidden away for 18 years.
Oh, my goodness.
And Wendell, in his older age and wisdom decided it's finally time to release this and make this public.
Amen
And I
to
thank him
that.
for it. Thank you, Wendell.
Yes, thank you very much. Colonel Wilson, there's also a strange story on the documentary that I won't go into now, but it had to do with a glowing plane, and he was unconscious. The plane landed, and there was a strange glow around it that was witnessed by people.
Flew for 3 days without refueling, landed with the same amount of fuel aboard as when he called in, with dying at the controls, and made a belly landing and rolled out, or not a belly landing, rolled out on the runway, but he was rescued and taken to the hospital, and he survived.